Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Happiness Is podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Is Egg-Shaped. And today, like always, I'm very excited and I'm going to be in big trouble from my mum because I sense that today I'm going to laugh a lot. Today's guest I met through some quizzes that we did online during the first lockdown in 2020 for Doddie Weir, and I met him for a quiz where we stood on boys' own stools as well. I've actually met him in person, but most of our relationship has been over the interweb, and I am delighted that he is going to be side by side with me on screen today. He is the one and the only Mr. Ollie Phillips. Hello, sir.
Brucey, price is always right with you, as they say, and I'm delighted that I've been billed stand-up comedian for the next hour, so I can fall and discredit myself from massive grace within 5 minutes. So there we go. Great to be here, mate. Thank you for having me.
I'm so pleased. You are another one of the original on the list, which I'm slowly crossing off of the people that had to feature. So thank you for being here.
Who is still on it? Who's still on that list? Let's get a shout out to them.
Well, there's a couple who have promised that they will, but they just can't at the moment. And then there are other people who talk contract stuff, which I don't understand. But because you are,
who's giving you the bigger than contract chat, and who's giving you the
Don't you go and upset them, because then they won't come on. One of them you know very well.
We're going to make them feel uncomfortable. Come on.
Ben Ryan.
Come on, Banjo, mate. The boy from Teddington, he's got to come on. I mean, just because he's got his face on pound notes now in Fiji.
He said he's coming,
He's efficiency though now, mate, so you've got to be careful.
He said he's coming. Chris Robshaw said he's going to come on.
Oh, cool. Good lad. Robbo from San Diego. He can show you his tan, which obviously I don't have any of at the moment, but there we go.
No, well, tell me about it. He looks like he's having a terrible time in America. An absolutely terrible time. And then there's a couple of others. Damien Hughes. Have you met Damien Hughes?
No, I haven't. No, I don't know Damien.
He would be a man right up your street, I reckon. The two of you, if you needed a sidekick to take over the world, I reckon Damien Hughes could be it if I don't meet the grade. Catherine Spencer?
Spence will do it, definitely. She's a legend as well. And my shout out to Damien. I mean, you're my brother from another mother. Clearly, we need to be reunited because Bruce says it's what we need.
It would be unstoppable. And Spence is claiming that between being a teacher and a parent, that she can only squeeze me in between this little period of time on a certain day in the future. So yeah, she's promised though. She said she'll come on.
She's a busy bee, so you got to get in there. Lock her in.
Yeah, it's done. Right, Mr. Ollie Phillips, you are now doing all kinds of stuff to inspire other people, and I want to know how long it took you to come up with a business name that was your initials. So Ollie Phillips is Mr. Optimus Performance. So how did that happen?
I mean, well, it was a brilliant bit of inspiration actually from a guy that used to be sort of on the media comms team at World Rugby, actually. A guy called Seb Lozier, top bloke, absolutely fantastic guy. And I spoke to him a little bit around launching this a while ago. This is in 2015, 16 or whenever it was. And I told him what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And he sort of said, well, look, we should make it all around your personality and how you are. I'm quite glass half full and whatever else. And he just said, I think I've got it. And it was the Optimus Performance business. And obviously the OP at the beginning, we love it. And then we made the logo as a compass because I'm obviously traveling all over the place and travel's a major part of my life. So that's where it came up, mate. I mean, I wish I could give you some crazy story that it was in some Back and Beyond bar and I woke up and someone had tattooed it on my backside. But it's not that, unfortunately.
No, but let's go to the travel then. Now, I didn't know, and believe it or not, I do some research before I do these things. I knew about Everest. I knew about Everest, but I didn't know about what you did in America on a bike.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you're pretty good in a boat. And I did.
Well, hold on, mate. You didn't know I'd sailed around the world. I did that for a year. That was the first thing I did.
See that just blew
Unbelievable.
you sailed around the world. How on earth were you contained on a boat all the way around the world? Who did you inflict that on?
Can you imagine? Can you imagine how those 20 people felt on board my boat? They were like, we're actually locked on here with this bloke for 28 days at a time. We can't get off it. There's nowhere. I mean, even the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean was probably looking appealing by like day 15, 16 for them. But yeah, mate. Well, I mean, it was a bit. I mean, so in all seriousness, that whole event came about. Well, I imagine most people that listen to this podcast are rugby fans in some shape or form, and it had come about actually through a rugby fan. So the bloke who founded Clip Around the World race was a guy called Sir Robert Knox Johnson, an Irish guy that had made his name in the 60s because he was the first person ever to single-handedly sail around the world solo. Awesome bloke, typical Irish, always half cut every time you met him. Loved bashing the English whatsoever. At any opportunity, bash the English. I mean, so he and I, obviously, you can imagine, got on incredibly well because he used to come to us sevens tournaments, whatever else, just lay into me as England captain at the time, and I just loved it. So we got on really, really well. And then we were in the World Cup against New Zealand in Moscow in 2013, and we got absolutely spanked in the final. So we managed to get to World Cup final and then basically choked in the final. I think we lost, I can't remember, 33-3 or something like that. And I had actually injured myself, and it turned out to be sort of my career-ending injury, so to speak. But I didn't know. Well, I'd been told that at the time, but I was sort of refusing to acknowledge it. And Robin had rang me, being the sort of humble, gentle, sort of, appreciative, acknowledging friend / Irishman that the Irish can be, to gloat about the fact that we'd just been stuffed 33-3 in a final against New Zealand. And I think he realised that actually I was pretty down on my luck at this point, because not only we'd obviously lost the World Cup final, but I'd injured myself and I'd been told that it was sort of all over and a bit of a career ender. So, I mean, thankfully, he was obviously still pissed at the time. So he decided that he would extend an olive branch there and then and say, look, we've just done a deal with Downing Street on a Great Britain boat, and they really want a, like whatever you want to call it, ambassador to act as a trade envoy. You'd be perfect. So I was like, really? You think I'd be a perfect representative for the UK and the UK economy? But okay, fair enough. I'm in. Well, I didn't say I'm in there and then, but anyway, it evolved that from the moment I got injured, I had 5 weeks until this boat was going to set sail, and I had to do 3 weeks of training for this sailing race as well. And the Clip Around the World race, for people that don't know, is a 46,000 mile, 11 months away on the oceans, sailing around the world, starting in London and finishing in London. And I don't know why, maybe I was down on my luck as well at the time, but I just thought, yeah, all right, I'll do it. I'm in. So within 4 days of me injuring myself at a World Cup final, I was basically checked out for a year, and away we went.
But you relish challenges, but also being with other people, because you've always done this. You've always taken chances. You've always loved being part of a team. And I bet you were immense for the spirit in things like going up Everest and going around the world. Because you're like a Duracell bunny, or certainly that's how you come across.
Well, it depends who you ask. I mean, if you ask Tamara Taylor when we went up Everest, she might give you a different sort of opinion on, I think she's the second most capped England international of all time, World Cup winning legend, all the rest of it. And she was having a particularly sort of rough day on Everest one day, and I thought that energy was what she needed. And I was there behind her for about 8 hours, geeing her up, saying, come on, Tam, one foot in front of the other. You can do this. You've got this. You're smashing it. You look brilliant. Singing songs to Until, I mean, are we allowed to swear on the show? I don't know if we're allowed to swear on the show. So
Yeah, just not any
case.
big ones. Not any big ones.
No. Yeah. So, well, until about sort of 6 hours in, when she just stood up, she stopped, she turned around and she said, "Ollie, will you just F off?" And I was like, the cheek. So, no, but thankfully, in general, no, I didn't have anyone throw themselves overboard. We didn't lose anyone on the mountain. So there was, in general, the consensus was that my positive approach to life, as you've so rightly identified, Bruce, is more well received than not well received.
And have you sought those things to replace changing room or to replace that team camaraderie that you had for so long? Because that's the thing lots of people say they miss the most. It's not the winning or the training or the travel, it's the changing room or their mates or the banter. Is that been purposeful or has it just happened?
I think it's it's a cracking question. I think if I'm truly honest, I think it's a bit of both. I think it was so the Clipper race turned out to be an amazing decision, right? It turned out to be one of the most incredible adventures I'd had in my life. And it opened up my eyes to the opportunities of all the other stuff that I then went on and did, and if you like, lit the litmus paper for me to go and do all the things you mentioned, like Everest, North Pole, cycle across America, and whatever else. But that on its own, that very first one, I think that one was, if I'm hand on heart honest, was probably driven more out of desperation than innovation, if that makes sense. Like I was like being serious around it. Like I was in a pretty crappy place, having being 29 and finding out that my career was effectively over at that point in time because of an injury that nobody could diagnose or tell me what was wrong with me. That was probably the most frustrating part. And when this opportunity came around with the Clipper race, I just saw that, probably, if I'm honest, at the time, as a wow, here's an arena that like I can hopefully be good in. People want me. I can get more validation. It comes with all the sort of press and blah 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 and paraphernalia, and what a great experience it will be to go and sail around the world. And I think I had some delusions of grandeur that I would have a year out, go around the world, and then come back and be fit at 30 and try and go to my ambition was always to go to Rio, to the Olympics. So bizarrely I had this idea in my I could set up a race for Rio. So you went London to Rio as the first race. And I was like, right, wow, wouldn't it be brilliant? My first race on the Clipper race is to Rio, and my last port of call in my international career, when I come back and make a big comeback, would be Rio and Olympic Games. Like, wouldn't that be amazing? Blah, blah, blah. It didn't help that I didn't have a leg that would work or I could do anything with it. And I was sort of ignorant to that. So the Clipper race was definitely sort of delusions of grandeur, a bit of desperation. And then all the other ones afterwards have been centered around, wow, these things are amazing, doing them with brilliant people for amazing causes and having, the experience of a lifetime. And so, yeah, that's why I've done it and keep doing it.
But people will keep asking you because of what you offer. And people will keep asking you because they know you buy into these things and you're wholehearted and you probably bring other people along with you. Do you realize that? Did you realize that was the kind of player you were, or was that something that just came with a bit of maturity or age rather than maturity?
Yeah, I've just never tried to take life too seriously. So I've always tried to embrace the fun, and I've always taken an interest in other people. Like I've always been, I've always liked it to. I like stories, so I like hearing people's stories. I like hearing people's ambition. I love sort of hearing their goals and aspirations, and then helping them achieve them. I find that quite rewarding. So I mean, I would never ever like to suggest that I'm at any level of maturity ever, but maybe that's got more refined as time's gone by. But I think the other thing, to your point, is when you're in these scenarios, whether it be Everest or North Pole or sailing around the world or whatever, there are definitely moments, even for me personally, right, but where just life gets a bit tough. You're like, poor, I'd much rather be back at home watching the rugby, just not really worrying about life. Why do I want to go out and walk 100 meters in the freezing cold snow, shovel a big hole in the ground to have a poo, and my hand freezing to a shovel, like all these sorts of things. Like when you're at the North Pole, it's -50, and you're thinking, God, I'm sitting here half squatting with my hand frozen to a shovel, worrying about a polar bear coming out to attack me whilst I have a number 2. Like, I think there's definitely moments where I've been like questioning my sanity or rationale for it all, but I think in those moments, I found that my general approach to it, which is like, isn't this just a brilliant environment? Aren't we just so lucky to be here, doing something that nobody really ever's done, being in places that nobody really ever goes to? Isn't that special? And that, in general, except for Tamara Taylor, brings everyone back online in a positive frame of mind.
We love Tamara Taylor on here. She's been a guest. We're big fans of Tamara Taylor.
Yeah.
She did mention you, actually.
Oh God, no. Did she mention that moment or not?
No, she was quite polite. She was quite polite. She
wasn't on the mountain. She wasn't on the mountain. But I love her. She's a legend.
Yeah, she is a great lady. Now, you played sevens to an unbelievable standard, and you were voted the best player in sevens for one of your seasons in 2009. Did you know you were that good? Did you feel like you were just in the zone, or did you get that and think, why me? How did your ego cope with things like that?
Yeah, I don't think I ever. I mean, I don't think I ever believed I was the best player in the world. I think you've obviously always got, well, I did anyway, aspirations to be the best at what you did, right? So I wanted every single time to be the best in my job for my own personal drivers and also for the collective good of my team. Like, I recognized that playing for England, if everyone else was going to bust a gut to deliver their best, it was my duty to do exactly the same thing. So I yes, I loved it. And when I saw the list of names that came out originally, I was like, Jesus Christ, how am I even on here? But clearly all those sort of brown envelopes that I've been slipping under the coach's doors and stuff are working. And then when they gave it to me, yeah, I was a bit surprised. I'll be honest. I was a bit. I was incredibly grateful. And don't get me wrong, I had a good season. Like, I personally had a good season, but I think collectively England had a bolter of a season. Like, we'd finished something like 6th the year before or 7th the year before. I hadn't actually played in the year before. I'm not saying it was anything to do with this, but here we were, sort of sitting number 1 in the world at this point a year later. So. And if I'm honest with you, like, I know loads of people do palm this one off all the time, but it is genuinely true. Like, there was no one in our team that was like standout worldy, but everybody was class. From Chris Cracknell, Kev Barrett, Rob Vickerman, Tom Big, Mondale, Young, just Greg Barden. The list was pretty endless in terms of like the people that contributed to it. But whenever we turned up, we were just on it. We were just excellent, and just everything just seemed to come together that year, and we were knockout. And maybe because I was captain, I don't know, that I got sort of attributed to that. But either way, I'll take it. You know what I mean? I think once you've got the medal, that's it. No one can take it away from you then. So whether you deserved it or not, you say, look, I was still the best player in the world. So whatever you like. Yeah.
And quite rightly, you'd be the ideal sevens captain. Is there a difference between a 15s captain and a sevens captain? Because a sevens tournament, especially far away from home, and some of the amazing places that you went to play rugby, there's a difference, isn't there, between a 15-a-side captain and a 7-a-side captain?
Yeah. I mean, there is definitely, just because if you like, in a 15s environment, there's more little nuances that go on, but the game is fundamentally slower, right? And then when you live for the weekend, right? You get to the weekend, you live for that one game, and then you basically peak for that start of the 80 minutes. You've got to last the 80 minutes, and then you go off into the sunset and reflect on whether you did well or you didn't do so well. Whereas in the sevens, it's the emotional roller coaster across 2 days. You build to the weekend, you peak for the first game, you've got to deliver for those 40 minutes, drop off, relax, chill out for whatever it is, 3 hours, 2 hours, peak again, perform, drop, peak again, drop, and then do the same all over again on day 2. So I think that that would lend itself to, if you like, maybe my personality, but it doesn't mean that my personality is the right across the board. But somebody that really relished the opportunity of, like, yeah, let's go, let's get up for it. Let's just get moving, let's get energetic. But then you've got to recognize that certain people are not motivated like that. Certain people like their own solitude, their own time to get their headspace. Some people like to punch themselves in the face and headbutt walls. So it's when I'm the type of person that wants to high five, lucky bum taps, give everyone cuddles, you can imagine that as they're punching each other in the face and headbutting walls, I'm probably not their favorite person to be around. So I had to sort of be a bit delicate with some of those personalities from time to time.
But you've already said you love being with people, and picking those people out would be a skill of yours. Where did you go? Hong Kong, Dubai, America, Canada, South Africa, when they moved the venue, where did you go that you really looked forward to and you thought, this is the showtime, this is the one I really want us to win?
Well, I mean, without copping out, obviously, all of them. I never went to any tournament, and I remember we sat in our training ground or whatever at the Lensbury at the beginning, and I'm not a massive reader, but I had, believe it or not, managed to read a book, and it was called Decide to Win. And it was all around, basically sort of your own mental approach and whatever, and belief set. And so I was just adamant that we, needed to think, act, exude, everything about us needed to represent that we were winning. Like, we were a side that would win. And we believed it, we knew it, we delivered on it, kind of thing. And so I was sort of fairly adamant about championing that all the time. And I got mocked for it a little bit at the beginning, just trying give it up, mate, kind of thing. But all these things start to wear off on people a little bit, rub a little bit, and so as you went around the world, it was just different environments. So when you went to Dubai, you knew you were going to be going into a place that was sort of just pre-Christmas. Everyone was in party mode, full of expats, 55,000 across 2 days, pissed off their mind, desperate for England to do well, right? So that was a pretty easy environment to go into, because, I mean, expectations tough because they expect you and hope you're going to win, but they're so behind you and they lift you, right? Whereas when you go to, and the same for Hong Kong, same for Twickenham, whereas when you go to Murrayfield or you go to Wellington in New Zealand, I mean, the first thing they think about is drowning an Englishman anywhere they can, right? So they are desperate for us not to do well, and they in every May, and they will play. In New Zealand, they played Dad's Army when we ran out. They used to throw pints of, I don't know what it was, but pints of something very warm and yellow all over us when we ran out. So it was hostile. This place was aggressive, hostile, but you equally took motivation from that, but it's just in a different way, just a different fashion. But all of them were special. But some of them stand out more than others, purely probably because of performance and how we did, outcome, and all the rest of it.
And a 15 squad, especially an international 15 squad, has as many hangers-on, if not more, or committee people and analysts and physios as there are players. But a sevens squad is all hands on deck, isn't it? And the coach is has to do more and the physio probably does more and you've all got to carry the bags. Does that make the relationship stronger?
Yeah, I mean, I asked Ben Ryan to give me a massage, but he never would. I mean, it's never forthcoming. Yeah, no, I mean, it does. We used to actually have a song by Kanye West called Family Business. I don't know if you know that song, but it was centered all for us because of we were a family. Like, we were a family that went around the world, and we were really close knit. And as long as there wasn't, well, because we were playing so well as well, nobody would really be getting dropped unless there was an injury. So it was family business, this whole thing, and it's comes thick and fast. You start in December, you finish in May, and within that you've got 10 venues to go to. And in the year that you're talking about, in 2009, we had a World Cup as well in Dubai. So we were pretty much away from home the entire time. So you had to get on with each other. You obviously need to give each other some space from time to time. But you had to sort of really relate to one another, embrace it all, and treat each other as a collective family. And bizarrely, like, now we've all retired, or I think most have retired now, or nearly. There's a few still hanging on, but even though we do this typical bloke thing, right? We never see or speak to each other for donkey's years or whatever else. But if we ever see each other, it feels like it was yesterday. And there's always that moment. There's always this, even though nobody says it, there's always this sort of sense between all of you of, you shared in that super special moment for everyone, for England, for us, for careers, teams, whatever else. It was a really special time.
Did you ever, in all those places, and it might have been on the Monday morning, did you ever wake up in a hotel and have to remind yourself which one you were at or which country you were in?
God, yeah, I thought you were going to ask something else there when you wake up on a Monday morning. No, I mean, you didn't ever get lost in that. I mean, obviously, there was a couple of heavy nights after, if you won Hong Kong, if you won Dubai, where you probably wake up and Monday was a bit hazy and you weren't sure what was going down. But the irony of these sort of things were, when you were on the tour, because everything went back to back, if you won the first one out of the two, so like, for example, Dubai, South Africa, they were always back to back. So if you won Dubai, because you'd have to, obviously, you'd played more games than anybody else had played. You probably had to work harder than anybody else had to work in order to win the tournament. So you were therefore likely to be the most knackered. And because within 6 days' time, you were doing it all over again in Cape Town, coupled with the fact you had flights and whatever else, you weren't really that motivated to go out and get hammered and whatever else after the Sunday, because you're like, if I'm going to do the crime here, I'm going to have to do the time, and the time is pretty painful. So you sort of swerved it. So really, you needed to make sure that you were class back to back, and by the time it all finished, like, so for the second leg in Cape Town, if you'd won that as well, then you properly let the pin out, and I'll be honest, you didn't know what day it was or where you were full stop the next day. But because it was such a relentless schedule that it kind of flashed past you, and you were just always focusing on the next one.
And the sevens environment is so different, and you were a traveling roadshow, but you played with big clubs, and I think your sevens career sometimes eclipses what you did in the 15s game. You were the best player in France, best overseas player in France. Like, that's another pretty high esteem award to have won.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly just, the French love to hate the English, but I was the only roast beef that learned to speak French, so maybe that's why they gave it to me. Or maybe they just gave it to me because I thought, if we give it to him, he's the only one that can actually speak French at the awards ceremony, so we'll understand what he's talking about. No, I mean, so it was an ambition of mine, right? And I did have, I don't know the word, but like a chip on my shoulder, if you want to call it that there was a bit of momentum coming behind the sentiment when I'd actually won World Player of the Year in 2009, that you needed to segment the two. Like, you couldn't be a top class 15s player and be a sevens player, or vice versa. Sevens players didn't make world-class 15s players, or 15s players didn't make world-class sevens players. And I still vehemently believe that that's nonsense. And so, I mean, there's a good story around which we can maybe go into, but I had been recruited for Stad, right, to go and play for Stad, off the back of my sevens performances, really, because I was away for 6 months. So I didn't really get to play for Newcastle in that year when the World Cup was there, because I was pretty much flying all the time. And when you come back from a lot of these tournaments, it took you a game or two for the club to reintegrate you back in. So I'd really got signed off the back of that year, my sevens performances that year, to Stade Francais. And obviously at that point in time, Stade were, arguably the biggest club in Europe, or one of the biggest clubs in Europe. And so I was like, I've got a sign there. I mean, not only that, I'm from Brighton, so any opportunity to wear pink and get in touch, with that was obviously right up there. But I wanted to just challenge myself. I've been at Newcastle, which was a great club with some brilliant players. We'd always underachieved, and I wanted to go somewhere where we would win something, be in the arena for winning something, play in massive competitions, and really develop as a player and test myself. I was 25, 26 at the time. And I went over there and threw the kitchen sink at it and properly went for it. In all senses, not only rugby, in my rugby capacity, yes, and my training capacity, but also just in my life. I wanted to, you said I'm the Energizer Bunny, if you like, for those 2 years, my God, the energy that I threw into that, in terms of learning the culture, the city, the language, everything. Like I was totally and utterly relentless in terms of that, and it paid massive dividends. And if I'm honest, probably leaving there was one of my biggest regrets in my career, because I loved France and the and club, and my award in 2011 of being voted as the best. I was top try scorer in the league. I was top try scorer for my club, and I'd got voted as best foreign player or best overseas player, whichever one you call it. And yet, bizarrely, I couldn't get a club. I couldn't get re-signed because I'd been screwed. I'd been screwed a bit, to be honest, by Michael Checker, who was our coach at the time. I'd got a knee injury in the November, and quite a bad one that was manageable. We could keep managing it, but I needed, with regular injections, but I would need an operation. And I'd seen checks in the November, and I'd sort of said, look, what do I want to do? And he's like, look, I could really do with you playing and staying on and whatever else. And I was loving it too. Right? I was scoring a lot. I was playing a lot. I was really enjoying my rugby. So I didn't really want to go and have an off either. And if it was manageable, I was sort of like, okay, let's do it. And so out of the 35 games we had that season, I played 30. I started 34 of them. And the only one the only one he didn't start me for was the European Cup final against Harlequins, which he put me on the bench for, which was ultimately my last game, which really annoyed me. And we lost that game as well. And it was an unfortunate mistake by the lad that was in my place, Gibril Camara, who was a great guy, good young player, but it was probably a bit of a baptism of fire for him for that game. So that was pretty annoying. But anyway, during that time period from November onwards, I was up for my contract that year, and I was sort of having good, positive conversations. Checkers like, you're a vital part of the squad, and blah 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 blah. And then it got to sort of end of March, April, and I was like, there's still no contract coming forward. There was some mutterings that Max was really struggling with the money as well. The club was maybe going to go bust, so that had delayed everything. And then by the time it came to the end of May, which is when we played this game, obviously my contract was up at the end of June. I had a dodgy knee that was going to need at least 6 months out. I was totally over a barrel with Stad and Czechs because I didn't have anywhere else to go. He knew it, and then he ended up not signing me and signing Paul Saki instead, and that really was disappointing. And you know what, it's even more. But you talk around like the energy and whatever else that I brought. Like I'd obviously finished as the top try scorer and overseas player and whatever else. But the energy that I brought into the club and the enthusiasm with the fans really resonated, because 4 fans, quite wealthy fans, came forward to Checker and said, Ollie Phillips needs to stay and we'll pay for him. We'll pay for him to be here next year. We'll cover his salary, but he needs to stay at the club because he's such a great representative and player and whatever else. And Checker refused. So that that unfortunately didn't materialize. But I had an amazing time. It was absolutely what a club, what an experience, and I just feel very grateful and for having that experience, and thankful for it all. It was an amazing place. What a brilliant city.
And you used to get some interesting visitors, didn't you? You knew I was getting round to this one.
For Stad, oh my God. I mean, bearing in mind, right? I mean, bearing in mind that you would have at Newcastle, 4 people turn up to a game, maybe 5 if you're lucky, if their dog counts. And here I was going to Stad, where we play in front of like 80,000 at the Stade de France and whatever else. And I remember our first game against Perpignan. I walked down the tunnel, and there was James Haskell had signed with me, and I was walking down the tunnel with Hask. And as we walked down, there were 40 of the women from the Moulin Rouge all stood there with topless and everything else like that. And I was like, what? What is going on here? So I was like, well, obviously it was the slowest walk I'd ever taken to a pitch in my life. I must take 35 minutes walking out for warm up just so I could get out there. And then when I walked out there was a massive wrestling ring raised like 20 feet up in the sky, and these dirt bikes in the center of the pitch, and these dirt bikes that were jumping over the top of this wrestling ring and down on a ramp the other side. And I was thinking, bloody hell, like, where are we? Like, and also, where the hell do we warm up, kind of thing? Like, the whole pitch has been consumed by this circus. And that sort of set the precedent for everything, right? Fireworks and just lavish, utter craziness. And after that Perpignan game, which is what you're getting to, Max Guazzini, who was our sort of gregarious gay owner, loved coming into the changing room because it was his opportunity to do a bit of I Spy or whatever else, and he's an absolutely heroic human being. But he would come in, and because he used to own this radio station called NRJ, but NRG over there, he knew all these sort of celebrities and pop stars and whatever else. And so, like, after this game, he brought Madonna into the bloody changing room. No, it's like, excuse me, is that Madonna? Like, what? I'm like a virgin. Don't worry about that. Like, prancing around. Obviously, all the boys getting super excited, and it's all shower time and bath time. And they used to have those old school big baths that now would be a health and safety absolute no-go. But we're all jumping in the bath. Everyone's like, "Come on, Max, in you come, in you come!" And they always used to go like this. He used to go. Because apparently he's got a big snake, so like trying to encourage Max just to play up to him to come into the bath. But equally, what they were really wanting was that Madonna would come and jump in with us into the bath. And so I just couldn't believe it. But bear in mind, this was like week 6 for me at the club. Talking about a baptism of fire, but sure enough, in jumps Max. Sure enough, I jumped as well. I forgot about all the health and safety requirements. That I was straight in there and sipping on Dom Perignon in a bath with a load of sort of semi-naked Stade Francais lads and a semi-naked Madonna. But brilliant. What more could I expect going over to sign to play rugby in Paris? I mean, ridiculous.
Just out of this world, I think, is probably the polite way to put it. And then you go and you do other things and you play at other clubs. Where did you find that again? Where did you find that love again? Did you have moments in the 15s game where you thought, right, this is me, I'm just going to stick at this?
I came back to the UK, one because obviously it'd gone a bit sour at Stad, but there was still some interest. Brive were wanting to sign me at the time, and Clermont were in as well. But I'd also met Martin Johnson because he was coming over to Stad at the time with his coaching team, because we had Hask and Tom Palmer playing for us. So he'd come over to see them and, you know, talk to them about the Six Nations or whatever else. And obviously at that point in time, I was actually playing pretty well in the league. You know, I was top try scorer and all this sort of jazz. So he'd had a chat with me sort of saying, look, from a political perspective, it's already challenging enough trying to get Hask and Wilco and Tom Palmer back. You know, adding you into the mixer is going to be too hard for us, like, especially having, you know, you haven't played yet in the squad or whatever else like that. But he said, you are on our radar. It's difficult for us to ignore you when you're playing like that well and scoring that many tries, etc., etc. But in order for us to consider you, you really need to come back to the UK. So I sort of commit anyway. It'd gone a bit wrong at Stad of coming back, and I knew I had to get my knee sorted, so I wasn't going to be able to have a club. But I went to Gloucester, and Ollie Morgan, unfortunately, bless him, had completely blown his knee out in a game in December, and that was the end of his career, really, at that point. And Brian Redpath, the head coach, who I knew well, and I'd played some pretty good games for Newcastle against Gloucester, had heard that I was back, and I just was about to return from injury. I was due back in the end of December, start of January, and so he sort of said, "Look, we'd like to sign you as I guess fundamentally as an injury recover at the beginning, with a view to sort of staying involved." And so I turned up at Gloucester, and I mean, I'd like to categorically say to all Gloucester fans, this wasn't my fault or anything to do with me. But when I walked in, we were in the Heineken Cup quarter-final and sitting, I think, third in the league. And then we never won another game from the moment that I turned up. So it was a total disaster. And I got injured loads. And so it was, I loved the club. I absolutely loved the area to live and whatever else. But yeah, I wish I could have contributed more and to the club.
And you enjoyed your stay there because you and Mike Tyndall used to get up to mischief.
Well, I mean, I think, yes, 100%. So when I signed there, I obviously coming in late as an injury replacement, and also because it was only a short-term contract with the potential of it being longer. In theory, I was only there for like 6 months, 7 months. And so I'd spoken to Tins, and I said, "Look, Tins, you're the only one that's got 6-month tenancy or something like that, or just and also where could I stay for those 6 months?" And I think he probably meant it like as a throwaway comment, like, "Oh mate, just come stay with us," without actually thinking that I might say, "Yeah, okay." He probably thought, "Well, he'll be good and he won't want to come stay with us." But I just went, "Yeah, I'm in, done." So I think he was then like, "Oh shit, he's come to stay with us." So that was kind of like that was just before he went away to the World Cup in 2011. And then obviously the whole wheels fell off of the England performance in New Zealand, and Tins got photographed, unfortunately, with his being a bit pissed and whatever else. And so I was like, "Oh God, what am I walking into? Is this going to be a disaster?" Like, Tins, you sure you don't want to pull the rug on me, sort of coming to live with you and Zara? I can be a marital counsellor if you want me to be, and whatever else like that. But they were amazing. They were absolutely. I mean, they are amazing. Just had their third baby, but yeah, it was like that film You, Me, and Dupree, like this awesome couple having an amazing time. It was just this random hobo. What was his name in Notting Hill? Spike. Do you remember Spike? Yeah. The Welsh bloke. That was basically me, just wandering around in my wife fronts all the time.
I love Notting Hill, but I would love to have been there when you met Mike's mother-in-law.
yeah, I don't think I would like to have been there when I met her, because I mean, Tins loves this story. Tins brought this up the other day as well. Still one of my most regretful moments. And I'm sorry to her for doing this, but yeah. Well, so to cut a very long and boring story short, I was at a party with Mike and Zara and a few other people, like a garden party or whatever else, barbecue. And I'd had one too many drinks, and obviously hadn't met her mum or anything like that. I literally just arrived in Cheltenham, and she'd sat next to me at a table that I was sat at, and I was busy waffling away to Mike and Zara, my girlfriend at the time, and hadn't realised that she sat next to me. And obviously, you go through moments in your life where you see these people on TV all the time, and you seem to think you get that moment where you believe they're like they're your best friend that you've ever met in your life. And when you're pissed, it makes it even more fueled, right? So I turned to my right and saw her and was like, "Oh!" Grabbed her, brought her in, and was like, "Oh, Mummy P, so good." And obviously, her name's not Mummy. Well, it is to Zara, but it's not to me, and it's not P either. But either way, she was just like, she just sort of. Well, to be honest, she was amazingly diplomatic about it. I was fully expecting like some dot to come round, sniper, boom, blown out, and then I just get sort of carried out and dragged along the floor. But I just looked at my girlfriend and I looked at Mike, and they were both pretty horrified. And I looked at Zara, and she was sort of laughing but a bit uncomfortable. And then I looked to my right and realised that I had obviously the Princess Anne in what could only be described as probably a noogie, ringing around, calling her Mummy P. So you quickly sober up in those situations, right? So I let her go. And I was like, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry," and and then it's like one of those situations you get at a wedding where you've sort of cocked up and you're like, right, what do I do here? Do I just go home? Lick my wounds, go to bed, and just forget all about it? Or do I just pull the pin and end myself? And I just chose pull the pin and end myself. So I went and had 6 more beers, because I'm a total Larry lightweight. I put myself in a horrible drunken hole. I was actually funneling with another member of the royal family that evening, and I woke up feeling pretty sorry for myself in the morning, regretting everything that I'd done, wanting the world to sort of consume me and swallow me in 1 second. And then, bizarrely and unbeknown to me, Princess Anne comes around the house every morning to walk the dogs. And she walked through the door, and I was sat on the sofa, and I looked over my shoulder. I was like, "Oh God," and tried to pretend like I wasn't there so she couldn't see me. But obviously, she could see some drunken, hungover slob on the sofa. And so she just went, "Good morning, Ollie. Don't worry, it's just Mummy P coming to walk the dog." That's what you wanted, wasn't it, Bruce? That's the bit you loved.
Just every time I hear it.
So I just feel like I'm so sorry. I'm really, really sorry about that. And she didn't say anything. She just walked out. And then, what made it worse? I then did some of these challenges for a children's charity called the Wooden Spoon. And who is the patron of that charity but bloody Princess Anne? So every event that I go to for the Wooden Spoon, that's a major event, she's kind enough to give up her time to come to. And every time she sort of gives me a wry smile, shakes my hand, leans over, and she says, "Mummy P reporting for duty." And I was like, "Oh God, stop. Make the pain stop." So unfortunately, this will never end. So there we go.
Especially with idiots like me that keep bringing it up, because I could never get enough of it.
Especially when you bring it up on a podcast that gets broadcasted out to the masses, and then they just hold me to ransom on it as well.
I love it. Ollie, I know you're a busy man and we're going to have to wind down, but you are worth hours and hours and hours, and I wish I had you for longer, but I have to be grateful for what we've got. So guests,
we'll do it again sometime, Brucey. We'll do it again.
Yes, that is a promise I will hold you to. So at the end, I ask guests the only bit of this that's scripted, and that is to finish a sentence for me. So Ollie Phillips, for you, happiness is...
This is where I get all serious, isn't it? This is bloody hell. I mean, for Ollie Phillips, happiness is my family. I know that sounds absurd, but I love. You know how you said to me, "Oh, you're the Energizer Bunny." Well, I've got like the one thing that I found that can actually out-energize me are my two kids. And they can absolutely batter me on the energy front. So I finally met my match, and I love my two girls, Lily May and Nia, and my amazing wife, Lucy. We're called the Sod Pod because my wife has this incredibly annoying habit of losing everything that I own. So it's called getting sodded. But yeah, happiness is the Sod Pod. There you go.
The Sod Pod. Unique. Ollie Phillips, you're an absolute gentleman, and I love to listen to your stories. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to see you in person, in real life, very, very soon.
Top man. Cheers, Brucey.
Cheers, Ollie. Thank you. If you do not leave Ollie Phillips better than when you arrived, then I want to meet you. The man is absolutely magnificent. I love him to bits. Every time I speak to him, I love him even more. And as a Scotsman who used to watch him play for England Sevens, I never thought I would utter those words, but he is an absolute gem. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please download us on Apple, Acast and Spotify. You can leave us a review, and remember, be nice. And you can also watch on Facebook and YouTube. And please subscribe and get involved. It would be great for other people to find us. Ollie Phillips, what a man. I hope you will be back to join us for more podcasts. My name is Bruce Aitchison from the Happiness Is podcast, and my happiness is egg-shaped. See you soon.